pay for insurance. Insurance companies love it. Most of the time you'll never use it. They're just collecting money. But if you need it, it might be valuable to have. The question and the tension of whether or not we need to have taxation is not whether or not we need it. Of course we need it. It's how much do we need? And then we have to be a little creative. How many of you like running over potholes, sinkholes? Do any of you fly? Back in December 31st, 2001, an Alaskan jet flying from Puerto Vallarta, I think it was supposed to go to San Francisco and then Seattle, fell out of the air. It turns out it was what they call it's based on the MD-80 system. I'm not going to get that right. My drawing's horrible. Anyway, they had the big tails, and they used to have this stabilizer up there. And from here up to here was a long rod, and there was an Acme nut there, and up in the pilot they could turn a wheel, and it would run back here, it would turn this, and it would turn, and this stabilizer would either go down or it would go up. Up when you're trying to take off, the wind hits it and it lifts the nose up, and when you're trying to land, it would go down. And like all things metal, it wears out. And so there was a window of replacement, and they were this close to it. And they decided to run the jet one more time. And this rod, the threads on it, came out of that Acme nut when it happened to be in the down position. And so it tilted the nose down, and there was no way to bring it back up again. That thing fell about 29,000 feet, and I think it was 90 people died that day. So we have an agency, it's called the FAA, the Federal Aviation Agency, to regulate things like that, to make sure that things are safe and secure. Well, if people made sure everything was safe and secure, we wouldn't need regulations and agencies. If everybody followed the law, we wouldn't need the law. But we live in a society where we have people who don't always want to do what's in everybody's best interest.
On that same kind of topic, I mean, I've read plenty of exposés on, airport security. And they say that the airport security catches, I mean, it's essentially a pointless agency.
It's a
smokescreen.
Right. It's, in the Greek, they call it, you know what a hypocrite is?
Yeah. Just to make people feel safer.
Well, and it does make me feel safer.
It doesn't make me feel safe.
No, I fly all the time. I'm never worried about it. You have more danger of going down in an airplane that doesn't have a terrorist on it, that's not been properly maintained. You would not believe the amount of parts in an airplane, in a modern airplane. Not just wire, but parts and how they rivet it in. And I don't want to scare anybody. The engines are on by 3 main bolts.
I'm flying next week. Please go.
And the wings. And you take a 50-ton bird and you slow it down to 140 miles an hour and you land that thing on an immovable object called a tarmac. You know what aeronautical engineers call a landing? Controlled crash. It's amazing how often they bring it down. Now if you bump, when you land, you do a little skip, hop, and a jump. Those are Navy or Marine pilots. They're Navy or Marine pilots because they have to hit a deck that's going up 30 feet and down 30 feet. If it goes down when they go by, they'll overshoot it. So they have to hit it. Now, if you have a nice smooth landing, that's probably an Air Force pilot because they have long runways and they just glide their way in. It just kind of hits and goes down. Say again? Just how they land. Yeah.
I'll tell you guys all about it.
You'll know as soon as you touch the ground. You'll know if it's smooth or not. If it's smooth, I put my money on an Air Force pilot. Not that Navy and Marine pilots can't do that. If they've been flying long enough, they enjoy the long runway.
CH-147. If it's not leaking hydraulic fluid, don't get on it. Dead serious.
We had that for something called, and I'll get back to that. We had that for the SR-71, the Blackbird. Yeah, that thing took off leaking fuel. It had to because when it got up to speed and height, it was going so fast the friction literally caused, it was titanium, I think, literally caused it to expand. So they'd wait till they got up in the air and then they'd do an in-air refueling. Interesting, right? And we get in those things. We get in. You were going to share something real quick or no?
I was just going to make that point. You're talking about the maintenance of aircraft, and yet we spend more money on. I just don't get it. Like the last time I flew, I was coming out of Nebraska, and instead of going through the full body radiation scan because the team, they were so busy, it was go to the metal detector, you're fine. Okay, that makes me feel safe.
You know what a kabuki dance is? In the day, just like in Greece, women couldn't participate, I think, and so the word hypocrite is really a Greek word. It's hypocrite, and what would happen then is they had talented ladies in art and theater, but they couldn't culturally, so they give them a mask, and they do that, and that's how everybody just turned the other way. And so that became a false face, and then we have called it a hypocrite, someone who puts on a false face and won't show their genuineness.
It's kind of the same thing as a young boy playing with a woman in Greece or Rome.
Sure, same thing, same thing.
Isn't there a god named that?
Rebecca, say it louder for me.
Isn't there a god named after like being a hypocrite?
Could be, I don't know of one.
I think I'm going nuts.
There's a lot of human ones that ought to be named after one. But so anyway, I try not to get political. So anyway, so we have this need for taxation. Hey, bridges. Bridges fall down as Minneapolis. One just collapsed.
Where?
People in Minneapolis, Minnesota, they were just driving across. It was springtime because I remember the mountains were, the snow on the mountains was melting. Rivers were running fast. I mean, it just collapsed. People went down. People died in that. So the tension then is how much taxation in this case do we need? How much regulation do we need? And it's always a balance between the two. If you go too far one way, you get anarchy. If you go too far the other way, you get totalitarian. Culture and times influence what we're willing to do and what we're not willing to do. In the 1920s, we were not willing to do most of what we do now. When we get to the abortion module, I think I've already shared this, in 1965, I think there were, I always get the number wrong, 31 or 16 states that wouldn't allow the sale of contraception in pharmacies. You can go into like Publix, and they have contraception there now. It was taboo. You could not do it. That was what the law regulated, and people said we need to lighten that law up, loosen it up. So we're going through this. It's always a movable process, and it moves this way, people. The restrictions are always represented by the law. How does law get made? You need to take Professor Walter's American Government class. Laws get made because people who have the authority to make law, if they get enough agreement, then they make a law. 1963, the American Civil Rights Act. So people make law. And whoever has their hand on the mechanism of the law can take the moral climate and turn it this way or turn it that way. There were people back in, I think it was 2012 presidential election, literally wanted to go back to no contraception. We did it once. What was wrong with it? Well, what was wrong with it is that most people didn't agree with it, and that person faded real fast. But these kind of things happen within the framework of a society that's democratic in nature and libertarian founded. And it rests upon the values. And those values, once embodied or embraced, will move the moral compass of this country. We can go one way or we can go another in a heartbeat. You just need to get yourself in a position of law. Now, you either find someone who you believe is going to do what they say they're going to do when you elect them, or get yourself elected. And very few people want to do that. It's a very arduous process. But the law won't change unless someone changes the law, Carl.
So I was at the Sims Park on Saturday.
Is it?
I was at Sims Park in Newport on Saturday, and there was a gentleman going around with a constitutional amendment for the state of Florida. Is that a case where they're trying to get enough signatures to get it on the ballot?
Yeah, it's called a referendum. That's a good point. If you get enough people, the will of the people, government of and for and by the people, but that doesn't mean legislatures are going to pass it. But that's one way of trying to get your voice heard, and then hoping the representatives. It used to be before 1960, if a representative said he'll do this and that for you, they used to do this and that for you. Then they came up with the internal conscience. Well, I can't see it that way, and so they didn't do things that way. Are you with me on that? So if you have a problem with the moral compass, you need to change the law. If you're not willing to invest yourself in the effort necessary to change the law. We had a young girl from, I think, Hudson, Florida, is the youngest state representative in Florida. I think maybe she was 19 when it started, and now she's 20. I have no idea what her political agenda is, but she worked for it, and people voted for it, and she got in. So there's always a price to pay no matter what we do. So any questions about the balance necessary between libertarian and the principle of paternalism? Rooted in the word paternalism is the Latin word pater. Anybody know what pater? Want to say?
Father.
Father, yeah. Well, we're going to apply it to medical ethics for the rest of the semester. This is physician knows best. And frankly, how many of you think you know more than a physician when you go in? You can get educated, but they're educated for 16 years plus years and years of practice. Doesn't mean they can't be wrong. But we defer to them because they have the understanding. But we'll see in the next coming weeks that you have the freedom to disagree with them. Second opinion, third, you can go shopping for an opinion. It may kill you, but you can go shopping for an opinion. That's in Supreme Court law. I'll bring that up, if not the end of today, then by Wednesday. So, what is the proper tension? Well, we tend to look at tension, and tension kind of says something negative to us, but tension doesn't have to be negative. You have 5 digits on your hand, and this one is notoriously called the opposing thumb. It's the only one that can do this. And what happens then when you do this to each of the fingers is you bring a certain tension to the hand and its capacity to do certain things, without which the thumb you could not do things. Patriots last night, just losing a game. And then when you're all done, that's called cutting you some slack. I didn't. It's just easier to use the thumb and get it done. So tension doesn't have to be bad. Anybody play stringed instruments? You have tension on a stringed instrument. The right amount of tension makes melody. Too little, bang, and too much, bang. Any of you do bow hunting? Same thing. You need the correct amount of tension. So the issue in a libertarian political philosophy that understands the balance between the need for tension, the need for restrictions, and the need to maximize freedom is what this is all about. That's why applied ethics becomes so important. And we have to understand it moves. It moves based on values and opinions that aren't necessarily right. And if you don't agree with the values, you need to put the effort in, putting your hand on the mechanism of the law. Everybody get that too? Okay. So, I'm in 8th grade, and we just get back from lunch, and my English teacher sits us all around in a circle and takes out a book on what medicine was like in the middle 1800s in this country. And the scene is that everybody's in a wooden amphitheater. Wood because there's no concrete, and amphitheater is something